10,000 warships, and not one of them possessed the decency to be ugly. They were perfect, a fleet of gunmetal monoliths arranged in an immaculate geometric lattice that offended Captain Rhiannon McKinley on a deeply personal level. Such obscene order belonged in a theorem, a construct of pure thought, but here, it blotted out the stars at the edge of her home system. On the main view screen of the Vagrant, the Phalanx Imperium's armada looked less like a military force and more like a cosmic disease, a perfectly symmetrical plague poised to sterilize Earth. Inside the cramped, perpetually humming bridge of the Vagrant, the recycled air was thick enough to chew. Caspian, one half of an identical, morally bankrupt duo, attempted to demonstrate a shell game variant to Goliath. The giant of a man watched the cups with the placid focus of a mountain observing erosion, his massive brow furrowed in concentration. The ship itself was a testament to desperation, a prototype scout cobbled together with scavenged parts, illegal modifications, and a sheer refusal to die. Its corridors smelled of overheated wiring, ozone from a cracked plasma conduit, and the faint, unsettling sweetness of the hydroponics bay, fighting a losing battle against entropy. "You see, big fella," Caspian said, his hands a fluid dance over the magnetic crash table. "The trick is to always follow the prize. It's quick, it's clever, but it's always where the smart money is." He laid 3 dented metal cups in a row. "Now, where is it?" Goliath pointed a finger the size of a wrench at the center cup. Caspian lifted it, revealing nothing but the scarred gray metal of the table. He then lifted the other 2, also empty. "Ah," Caspian grinned, producing a polished chrome bearing from his sleeve with a flourish. "It was never in the game to begin with. The first rule of any hustle is that the game is rigged." Goliath grunted, a low rumble that vibrated through the deck plates. "Rigged game. Don't play." He turned his attention back to the silent, menacing fleet on the view screen, his lesson apparently learned and immediately discarded. Across the bridge, Gareth ignored them all. He sat with his back to the bulkhead, methodically field-stripping a monstrous, custom-built kinetic shotgun. The rhythmic click-clack of heavy components sliding into place was an unnerving counterpoint to the silent dread permeating the bridge. He cleaned each piece with an almost religious reverence, a ritual for a man whose only faith resided in overwhelming firepower. The tattoo of a law enforcement shield, crudely carved over the knuckles of his left hand, was a faded, bitter blue, a ghost of a former life. He worked without wasted motion, his hands moving with a deep, ingrained familiarity that spoke of 1,000 repetitions in dark rooms and forgotten war zones. Rhea's private comm screen flickered, displaying the stern, wrinkle-carved face of Earth Command's Admiral Quint. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to smile somewhere around the second alien incursion. His uniform was immaculate, a stark contrast to the grease-stained, patched-up fatigues worn by the Vagrant's crew. "The Phalanx have burned 1,000 worlds to get here, Captain McKinley." The Admiral's voice crackled, tinny and distant. "Their advance has been a certainty. Your job is to introduce a variable into their equation. You will hold this line, at any cost." Rhea met his gaze, her expression a mask of hardened calm. "And what cost is Earth Command willing to pay, Admiral?" "Your ship, your crew, your life," Quinn said, his tone devoid of hesitation or empathy. "You are all condemned anyway. This is an opportunity to make your final moments count for something." He severed the connection, leaving Rhea to stare at her own reflection in the dark screen. The ambient hum of the life support and the quiet clicks of Gareth's shotgun were the only sounds. She swiveled in her command chair, a grim, humorless smirk on her lips. It was the kind of expression a predator gets right before the chase begins. "Well," she announced to her hand-picked collection of degenerates, felons, and one very large, very loyal rock. "Looks like we're the welcoming committee." The reality of their predicament descended upon the bridge like a dropped anvil. 10,000 state-of-the-art warships. One jury-rigged prototype held together by illegal tech and stubbornness. So, direct assault? Corvus, the other twin, suggested with a theatrical flourish. He leaned back in his chair until it creaked in protest, his feet propped up on a non-essential console. A glorious, valiant charge into the heart of the enemy? We'll be legends. Dead legends, but legends, nonetheless. I'm for it, Caspian chimed in, shuffling his empty cups. Imagine the ballad they'll write. The tale of the two handsome rogues and their hideously outgunned associates. Gareth slammed a fresh power cell into his shotgun with a percussive thump that made both twins flinch. Suicide, he grunted, the single word carrying the weight of a full paragraph of tactical analysis. He's right, Rhea agreed, her eyes scanning the tactical overlay projected in the air before her. Friendly ship count, 1. Hostile ship count, 10,212. Their point defense grid alone could vaporize us before we got within 10,000 kilometers. We'd be a smear of exotic particles before we could even broadcast an insulting gesture. All right. Plan B, Corvus said, undeterred. We fake a catastrophic engine failure. Classic. Vent some plasma, send out a distress call in a dead language, and play dead. They're arrogant, right? They might just ignore us, sweep us aside like space junk. Or they might vaporize us on principle, just to keep the shipping lanes tidy, Rhea countered dryly. Their tactical doctrine is perfect. They don't leave variables. They don't tolerate clutter. Caspian snapped his fingers. I've got it. The ultimate play. We open a channel and offer to sell them extended warranties for their warships. Think of the commission. We explain that for a low monthly fee, we can protect their capital ships from unexpected, human-related malfunctions. The quiet that followed was so profound it felt like a physical force. Gareth just stared at him, his expression unchanging. Goliath, who had been studying a simplified schematic of the Vagrant on a side panel, pointed a thick finger at the glowing icon of the ship's experimental reactor. Make it go harder, he rumbled, his voice a deep baritone that seemed to emanate from the ship itself. The twins burst into laughter. Simple! Direct! I love it! Caspian howled. Goliath, my friend, you have a gift for cutting through the noise. While the bickering and brainstorming continued its descent into absurdity, one member of the crew was silent. Tasha Velez was a blur of motion at the pilot's console, a whirlwind of nervous energy. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, her head cocked at an unnatural angle as she processed streams of data visible to only her. A high-frequency twitch pulsed at the corner of her left eye, a custom-built cybernetic that glowed with a soft blue light. Her entire nervous system was a bespoke, illegal tapestry of wires and processors, a masterpiece of self-taught bioengineering that made her the best hacker and pilot alive, and also a walking fire hazard. Suddenly, she let out a pained hiss, her body seizing for a split second. A wisp of acrid smoke, smelling of burnt sugar and plastic, curled from the seam where her cybernetic eye met her temple. Velez, status, Rhea snapped, her voice cutting through the chatter. I'm fine, Tasha bit back, rubbing her temple with the heel of her hand. Her good eye watered. Just a power surge. Feedback loop in the primary optical processor. Rhea's eyes narrowed. We've been over this. Push that custom junk too hard and you'll fry your brain. The ship's diagnostic says your core temperature is spiking. Tasha scoffed and turned back to her screen. The dismissal was absolute. The hardware can take it. My hardware always takes it. The software is the problem. She gestured vaguely at the monolithic wall of Phalanx data streaming past her display. Their network, it's not just code. It's alive. It's smug. The hopelessness settled back into the room, a physical weight that made the air feel thin. They were a joke a final, desperate gesture from a species that had already accepted its own extinction. They were condemned prisoners, and their gallows was an entire solar system away. Tasha's fingers froze over her console. Her twitching stopped. The manic energy that always surrounded her coalesced into a single point of intense, terrifying focus. She slammed her fist down on the console, a triumphant, wild grin splitting her face. The expression was terrifying. It was the look of a god who had just discovered a loophole in the laws of physics. Got it! She swiped a hand across her console, pulling up a massive databank that filled the main view screen. A chaotic mess of corrupted code, fragmented algorithms, and failed attack vectors filled the display. The digital graveyard of every failed attempt by Earth Command's best minds to crack the Phalanx network. It was terabytes of uselessness, a monument to human failure. Everyone's been trying to break down the front door, Tasha explained, her words tumbling out in a rapid-fire burst, the ideas coming faster than her mouth could form them. Brute force logic attacks, viral injections, but the Phalanx network isn't just digital, it's bio-digital. It has an ego, it thinks it's perfect. And when you think you're perfect, you don't build contingencies for your own protection. She zoomed in on the chaotic noise, highlighting a single, elegant pattern hidden within the digital garbage. It was a recursive loop, an error in the Phalanx's response to a specific type of corrupted data packet that every Earth Command analyst had dismissed as a system self-correction, a harmless anomaly. This is not a flaw, she breathed, her good eye gleaming with manic genius. It's a signature, a blind spot. They're so logical, so ordered, they literally cannot comprehend a command that is logically perfect but practically impossible. They can't conceive of a weaponized paradox. Rhea leaned forward, the gears in her mind turning. Explain it to us like we're Goliath. Tasha nodded, her focus absolute. I can stitch together all of Earth Command's failures. Every single failed hack, every corrupted file. It's not junk. It's the ingredients. She began to move her hands, weaving the corrupted data streams together into a single, pulsating strand of malevolent code on the screen. I'm not building a virus to crash their system. I'm building a piece of code that will perfect it. Caspian leaned in, squinting at the screen. Sparks, my lovely lunatic. Are you suggesting we help the house win before we've even placed our bets? No, you idiot! Tasha snapped, her eyes fixed on her work. I'm going to give their perfectly logical, perfectly obedient network the one perfect command it was always built to execute. A command so pure, so logical, it can't disobey. It will be the most elegant piece of code their system has ever seen. She paused for dramatic effect, her grin returning, wider and more unhinged than before. I'm going to tell their entire fleet's navigation system to calculate a faster-than-light jump using their current location as the destination. Rhea's breath hitched. An infinite loop. Better, Tasha corrected, a dark glee in her voice. A computational cascade. The system will dedicate 100% of its resources to solving this impossible navigational problem. It'll lock out all other commands, weapons, shields, communications, everything. They'll be paralyzed, completely focused on this single, beautiful, unsolvable puzzle. Corvus's eyes widened. So they'll just sit there, thinking really hard? That's the beauty of it, Tasha whispered, her voice reverent. The final step of any FTL calculation in their system architecture is to execute the jump. Their own automated procedures, their own perfect logic will trigger a fleet-wide simultaneous jump into themselves. They'll try to fold space onto a point that already exists. It will obey that one command until the laws of physics turn every single one of their ships inside out. The title of their mission, a piece of military propaganda, suddenly clicked into place for Rhea as a literal statement of intent. The fleet that destroyed 1,000 worlds vanished after meeting one human ship. Their mission was never about destroying them. It was about making them disappear. The plan was beautiful. It was elegant. It was utterly, cosmically insane. So, let me get this straight, Caspian said, slowly pacing the bridge. We have to fly our one tiny, already falling apart ship through a gauntlet of 10,000 warships, dodge enough plasma to turn a moon into slag, get close enough to their central command vessel, and I'm quoting the intel here, impenetrable fortress-class dreadnought, the finality. And then you, Sparks, have to get a clean shot to upload this philosophical brain fart of a computer virus. That's the gist of it, Tasha confirmed, already typing furiously. Gareth slapped the release on his final power cell, the hum of the kinetic coils rising to a hungry whine. Better than dying for nothing. The despair on the bridge didn't just evaporate. It was burned away, replaced by a greedy, manic energy. This was no longer a suicide mission. This was the overture to the greatest heist in galactic history. This was not about saving Earth. Earth was a planet full of people who had locked them up and thrown away the key. This was about survival, about freedom, and about the sheer, unadulterated glory of pulling off the impossible. Rhea McKinley grinned, a true grin this time, feral and full of teeth, a predator who had just been handed the keys to the zoo. "All right, you beautiful maniacs," she said, her voice a low, dangerous purr that promised violence and profit. "Forget Earth. Forget the Admiral, forget honor. We do this. We get our pardons, we get paid, and we get free. This is for us." A chorus of assent, a ragged collection of grunts, whoops, and the click of a shotgun's safety disengaging echoed through the bridge. The crew of the Vagrant was united, not by patriotism, not by duty, but by a shared and profound love of chaos and self-preservation. "Tasha," Rhea commanded, her eyes fixed on the star-blotting fleet. "Light it up." The Vagrant's experimental engines didn't roar to life. They screamed, a guttural, tearing sound that vibrated through the hull and into the crew's bones. The ship lurched forward, a jagged shard of black metal accelerating toward an ocean of certain death. Tasha Velez was no longer a twitching, nervous hacker. In the pilot seat, she was transformed. She was the one with the ship, her illegal neural interface translating her spasms and twitches into impossible maneuvers. Her connection to the Vagrant was so deep, so symbiotic that the ship felt less like a machine she piloted and more like an extension of her own body. "Engaging phase drive. Brace for dimensional shear," she announced, her voice flat and distant, already half lost in the river of data flowing through her brain. The universe outside the view screen dissolved into a nauseating smear of color and light. The ship shuddered violently, a sickening lurch that slammed the crew against their crash restraints with bone-jarring force. For a fraction of a second, they existed outside of conventional space-time. Then, with another gut-wrenching jolt, they were back, having blinked across 100 kilometers of open space. On the phalanx sensors, the Vagrant appeared as a flickering ghost, a sensor anomaly that was there one moment and gone the next, too erratic to target, too insane to be real. "Phase jump complete, 30-second cooldown before the drive tears itself apart," Tasha reported, sweat beading on her forehead. "Enemy fighters inbound. Lots of them." A swarm of sleek, crescent-winged phalanx interceptors peeled off from the main fleet, converging on their position. Plasma bolts, brilliant streaks of emerald green, began to stitch the space around them. One bolt struck home, tearing off a chunk of the Vagrant's outer hull plating. The ship groaned in protest, and on the bridge, Tasha cried out in pain, clutching her side as if the blow had struck her own body. "Aft port stabilizer is gone. We're venting atmosphere," she gasped. "I see him," Gareth's voice growled over the internal comm. He was strapped into the gunnery chair, his hands gripping the controls of the ship's primary railgun turret. His movements were calm and brutally efficient. Where Tasha flew with manic instinctual grace, Gareth fought with cold, geometric lethality. The railgun fired, a silent, impossibly fast sliver of tungsten ripping through the dark. A phalanx fighter vanished in a silent, expanding cloud of superheated gas. Thump, vroom. Another kill. Thump, vroom, a third. He was a surgeon with a sledgehammer, picking off the enemy fighters one by one. Down in the rattling, sparkling chaos of the engine room, Goliath performed a different kind of surgery. A primary power conduit, overloaded by the phase drive jump, had ruptured, spraying incandescent plasma across the deck. Alarms shrieked, a high-pitched digital scream of agony. Without a word, Goliath grabbed a thick sheet of discarded hull plating, using it as a makeshift shield. He waded into the plasma storm, his massive frame silhouetted against the blinding light. With a roar that was more animal than human, he gripped the two ends of the ruptured conduit in his insulated, industrial-grade forge gloves and physically forced them back together. The ship's internal lights, which had been flickering erratically, suddenly pulsed in a steady, rhythmic beat, a slow, powerful heartbeat that seemed to match the straining rhythm of Goliath's own. The alarms fell silent. Over the open comms, as Tasha weaved the crippled ship through a particularly dense field of fire, Caspian's usual snark was gone, replaced by a tense, focused whisper. "You got this, Sparks," he said, his eyes glued to the proximity alerts. "Just like stealing candy from a gravity well." "Focus on your part, Caspian," Ria's voice cut in, sharp as a diamond. "We're running out of time, and hull." Right. Showtime," Caspian muttered to himself. He and Corvus exchanged a look, a silent communication that passed between them in an instant. It was the look of two professional liars about to deliver the performance of their lives. They needed to get closer to the finality, but the dreadnought was surrounded by a personal guard of heavy cruisers that made the rest of the fleet look like a welcoming party. A direct approach was still impossible. It was time for the ultimate cold call. Corvus patched their comm system to the primary phalanx command channel, running their voices through a cheap, glitchy, off-the-shelf translation matrix they'd picked up on a backwater trading post. The result was a stilted, overly formal and slightly broken version of the phalanx high tongue, the audio equivalent of a badly dubbed historical drama. "Greetings, most glorious, supreme praetor." Caspian's translated voice crackled across the void, sounding like a malfunctioning protocol droid with a bad case of hero worship. "We are traitors, yes! Traitors to the weak and squishy human cause." Corvus leaned into the mic, adding his own layer of pathetic groveling. "We bring tribute, a stolen, experimental human warship. It contains secrets of a dishonorable superweapon. We offer this prize in awe of your magnificent tactical magnificence." Caspian added, for good measure, "Your mandibles are legend." The speech was an absurd, boot-looking caricature of everything their stolen intelligence files suggested the phalanx valued: strength, honor, and the utter submission of lesser beings. It was so over the top, so transparently false, that any sane commander would have blown them out of the sky for the sheer insult of it. On the cavernous, oppressively minimalist bridge of the finality, Supreme Praetor Malachi listened to the bizarre, groveling message, his massive frame rigid with contemptuous pride. His 4 arms remained crossed over his broad, armored chest. His face, a symphony of sharp planes and chitinous plates, was unreadable. His bridge officers, warriors clad in the same gunmetal armor as their ships, exchanged confused glances. "A primitive human trick, Supreme Praetor," one of his sub-commanders growled, his voice a low vibration. "They are erratic, deceitful, their actions lack honor. We should destroy them." Malachi let the silence hang for a moment before speaking, his voice a deep, resonant bass that commanded absolute authority. "Deceit is a tool for the weak. Their desperation is a testament to our power." His arrogance was a force of nature, a gravity well that bent all logic around it. He heard not a poorly executed con, but the appropriate, fawning terror of a lesser species, finally recognizing true superiority. He saw a chance, not just to gain a new weapon, but to publicly display the inherent disloyalty and cowardice of the human race. It was a perfect propaganda victory. Their minds are simple, their loyalty as fleeting as their lifespans, Malachi declared, a sneer twisting his thin lips. Their groveling is appropriate. Let the fools approach. We will claim their prize, dissect their pathetic technology, and grant them an honorable death. They will serve as an example to their entire world. He raised one of his 4 hands in a dismissive gesture. Order the fleet to hold fire. Lower the forward shields and prepare the primary docking bay. I want to look upon these traitors myself. His pride had just signed the death warrant for 10,000 warships. The vagrant drifted slowly, like a wounded animal, toward the colossal docking port of the Phalanx command ship. The sense of scale was obscene. Their entire vessel was little more than a barnacle, clinging to the hull of a leviathan. Magnetic clamps engaged with a heavy, final clang that echoed through the ship. The moment the airlock hissed open, the disciplined quiet of the Phalanx docking bay was shattered. Gareth was out first, his kinetic shotgun already roaring. The docking bay, a cavernous space filled with neatly arranged ranks of Phalanx honor guards, instantly became a kill zone. The Phalanx soldiers, accustomed to orderly firefights and battles of position, were completely unprepared for the sheer, close-quarters violence of a single man with a grudge and a weapon designed to turn armored targets into molten slag. Goliath stormed out behind him, letting out a bellowing war cry. He ignored the plasma fire splashing harmlessly off the makeshift shield he still carried. He charged to the nearest blast door, a meter-thick slab of reinforced alloy, designed to withstand a direct hit from a torpedo. With a sound of screaming, tortured metal, he ripped it from its hinges. He then proceeded to use it as both a shield and a battering ram, clearing a path through the enemy ranks with the unstoppable momentum of a freight train. The distraction was loud, violent, and utterly magnificent. It drew the attention of every guard in a 5-kilometer radius. While the symphony of destruction echoed from the primary docking bay, a secondary maintenance airlock on the far side of the hull slid open with a barely audible hiss. Rhea and Tasha, cloaked in thermal dampening suits that rendered them all but invisible to sensors, slipped out and moved silently through the ship's cavernous service corridors. They were ghosts, moving towards the ship's computer core, the biological heart of the entire Phalanx fleet. Simultaneously, on another deck, a very different kind of infiltration was underway. Caspian and Corvus, having quickly stripped 2 oversized suits of Phalanx armor from the first soldiers Goliath had pulped, were comically attempting to bluff their way toward the bridge. The armor was a disaster. It was built for a species with an extra elbow joint and significantly longer legs. They clanked into walls, tripped over their own feet, and struggled to operate door panels with fingers too thick and inflexible for the delicate keypads. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a patrol of 4 hulking Phalanx guards who snapped to attention. "State your purpose, warriors," one of them growled, his voice distorted by his helmet's speakers. Caspian puffed out his armored chest, a motion that nearly caused him to overbalance and topple backward. He steadied himself and deepened his voice, hoping the translator would do the rest. "We escort a vital message," he boomed, trying to sound imposing, "for the eternal glory of his most resplendent left mandible." The lead guard stared at them. He saw 2 of the most incompetent-looking soldiers he had ever laid eyes on. They were so clumsy, so idiotic, they couldn't possibly be a threat. They had to be on some kind of menial errand, probably assigned to a commander who had lost a bet. The guard grunted, a sound of weary dismissal. "Proceed," he growled, waving them through with a flicker of one of his lower hands. The twins clinked past, sharing a look of pure, unadulterated relief inside their oversized helmets. Their bluff continued, corridor by corridor, until they found themselves standing before the massive, ornate doors to the command bridge itself. In for a penny, in for a pound. They clanked their way inside. Rhea and Tasha reached the computer core. It was not a room of servers and blinking lights. It was a living chamber, a pulsating cathedral of bioluminescent cables and humming organic processors suspended in a nutrient-rich fog. It was the brain of the fleet made manifest. The moment they stepped through the threshold, the chamber came alive. Automated plasma turrets dropped from the ceiling. Their targeting lasers painting red dots on Rhea's chest. Rhea opened fire with her twin kinetic pistols, their silenced reports barely audible over the hum of the core. Her movements were a deadly dance, a fluid ballet of violence as she laid down covering fire. She's not just shooting. She was choreographing the firefight, taking out turrets and the few organic guards in a seamless flow of motion. Each bullet was an investment, each target prioritized with cold, calculated lethality. "Buy me time!" Tasha yelled, her voice tight with adrenaline. She slid past the firefight, a low-profile shadow against the glowing walls, and slammed her custom neural link into the central nexus of the alien mainframe. The world around her dissolved into a screaming vortex of pure data. She was not typing code. She was mentally wrestling with the Phalanx's security AI, a sentient digital entity that pulsed with arrogant, ordered logic. It sensed her presence, her chaotic, improvisational human thought patterns, and reacted as if it had been infected with a disgusting, illogical virus. The AI fought back, building firewalls of pure logic, trying to trap her in recursive paradoxes. But Tasha was not playing by its rules. She'd not fight its logic. She danced around it, a whirlwind of digital chaos against a mountain of rigid order. The virus upload began. A thin, blood-red progress bar appeared on Tasha's wrist-mounted display, crawling forward with agonizing slowness. 10%. On the bridge, Caspian and Corvus stood before the towering Supreme Praetor Malachi. He stared down at them, his forearms crossed, his expression one of profound disappointment. "You are the traitors," he rumbled. "You are small." 30%. In the hallways, Gareth and Goliath were finally pinned down. They had carved a path of destruction halfway to the engine room, but now, a solid wall of elite Phalanx soldiers advanced on their position. 50%. Outside, the entire Phalanx fleet, now fully aware of the infiltration, had come to life. The order to hold fire was rescinded. 10,000 warships began to shell the docked, helpless vagrant. The ship groaned under the assault, its emergency shields flickering and failing. 70%. The clock was ticking down to zero from a dozen different directions at once. The vagrant's emergency lights flashed, casting the bridge in a hellish red glow. The ship was being torn apart, piece by piece. In the corridor leading back to the airlock, Goliath, bleeding from a dozen shallow plasma burns, was physically holding a closing blast door open. The groaning metal was inches from his face, the pressure immense. His muscles, corded and straining to the breaking point, were the only thing keeping their escape route from sealing forever. Crouched behind the cover of the doorframe, Gareth ejected the last spent shell from his shotgun. It clattered to the floor, a final metallic note of desperation. He was out. He watched on a cracked wall monitor as a squad of Phalanx elite guards prepared to storm the computer core. They moved fast, a disciplined unit about to execute Tasha and end the mission. He reached into his belt pouch and pulled out his last round, a single, experimental ricochet shock round, a non-lethal slug designed for riot control in tight corridors, a 1 in a million chance. He took a breath. He saw his one shot, a prayer of predictive geometry. He loaded the round. He fired. The shot was not aimed at the enemy. It was aimed at a reinforced bulkhead 50 meters down the intersecting hallway. The shock round struck the bulkhead at a precise angle. It ricocheted with a high-pitched whine, zinging off a second wall, then a third, a deadly pinball of kinetic energy, before finally slamming into the lead guard's helmet. It did not penetrate, but it discharged its payload in a blinding, deafening flash of electrical and concussive force. The entire squad was momentarily disoriented, their optical sensors fried, their advance halted. On the bridge of the Vagrant, Rhea saw the move on a flickering security feed. A single, sharp nod of profound respect was her only reaction. Gareth had just bought them 2 seconds. On the bridge of the Finality, Malachi waved a dismissive hand at the 2 clumsy humans before him. Their pathetic, fawning act was already wearing thin. "Take these creatures to the brig," he commanded to his guards. "Their ship contains the tribute we seek. They are no longer of use." As 2 guards grabbed the twins by their oversized pauldrons and began dragging them away, Rhea screamed into her comms, her voice raw. "Tasha, now!" 80%. 90%. It was crawling. "It's not fast enough!" Tasha shrieked back, blood trickling from her nose as her own cybernetics began to overload, cooking themselves in their sockets from the strain. "I can't push any harder." Goliath's voice, strained and guttural from the monumental effort of holding the blast door, boomed over the comms. It was not a suggestion. It was not a plea. It was a simple, profound piece of advice that he had lived his entire life by. "Hit it harder!" That was all Tasha needed. It was the permission she didn't know she was waiting for. A feral, bloody grin spread across her face. "Okay," she whispered to herself. With a final, conscious thought, she bypassed every safety protocol, overclocking her neural processor and shunting all available power from her own life support into the interface. Her heart monitor on Rhea's display flatlined as she sacrificed her body to fuel the final push. The progress bar on her wrist did not crawl from 99% to 100. It flashed. A blinding instant of completion as the logic bomb, the chaotic, illogical, perfectly human piece of code, slammed directly into the central processing core of the Phalanx biodigital network. Tasha collapsed, limp as a puppet with its strings cut, smoke rising from her neural port. For one terrifying, silent moment, nothing happened. The shelling on the Vagrant continued. The disoriented guards recovered and charged toward the computer core. On the bridge of the Finality, Malachi turned his attention back to his tactical display, his finger poised to give the order to atomize the docked human ship. Then, on the main view screen of the Vagrant, a single Phalanx heavy cruiser, one of the thousands pouring fire onto their ship, abruptly stopped firing. Its engines, normally a soft green, flared an impossible, brilliant blue. The ship seemed to stretch, to distort like a reflection in a warped mirror, and then it simply zipped out of existence. Not an explosion, not a jump to FTL. It just vanished. Then another, and another. A chain reaction of silent, blue flashes swept through the fleet. Inside Malachi's bridge, alarms blared, a cacophony of digital panic. He stared at his tactical display, watching in horror as his invincible armada, his tool of galactic conquest, perfectly and fatally executed its one final elegant command, the recursive navigation cascade. 10,000 ships, all at once attempting to fold space-time and jump to a destination that was also their origin point. The laws of physics screamed, held on for a microsecond, and then shattered. As Caspian and Corvus were being dragged down a corridor, their guards suddenly went rigid, their armor locking up. The entire hallway around them began to stretch and distort, the metal bulkheads groaning as if under impossible tidal forces. The guards simply dissolved into motes of blue light. The twins, scrambling free, saw the fabric of reality itself tearing apart at the end of the corridor where the bridge was. Malachi looked up from his console, a flicker of horrified, final understanding dawning in his alien eyes. He finally understood the power of an enemy who did not play by the rules. His own command ship shuddered, its engines glowing that same fatal blue. And then it too vanished in a silent, final flash of light. The battle was over. The space where an armada had been was silent, empty, and perfectly, beautifully clean. The Vagrant was a wreck. It vented atmosphere from a dozen breaches, ran on emergency power, and smelled faintly of burnt electronics and superheated metal. But it was intact, and it was alone. The crew was battered, bruised, bleeding, but alive. Rhea rushed from the bridge and slid to a stop beside Tasha's motionless form in the now silent computer core. She slapped the emergency reboot sequence for Tasha's internal life support systems. Tasha coughed, a racking, painful sound. Her good eye fluttered open. Her cybernetic eye was dark, the delicate lens shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. A thin trail of smoke curling from the socket. It was fried for good. Did we win? She rasped, her voice barely a whisper. Rhea McKinley allowed herself a genuine, unrestrained smile. It lit up her whole face. We won, Sparks. We won. Just then, a Priority 1 channel from Earth Command forced its way through their battered comms. Admiral Quint's stunned, ecstatic face appeared on the main screen, the signal glitchy and unstable. My God, McKinley, you did it! Their entire fleet, it's just gone. What happened? Report! Give me a full tactical breakdown. Rhea looked around at the flickering image of her crew on the security monitors. Gareth was already field stripping a fallen phalanx's rifle, his curiosity overriding his exhaustion. Goliath was in the engine room, patching a critical conduit with a roll of industrial-grade thermal bonding agent. The twins, having blasted their way out of a dissolving corridor, were gleefully stuffing their pockets with the power cells and sidearms of their vaporized escorts. And Tasha, her one good eye shining with exhausted triumph, was slowly, painfully pushing herself into a sitting position. This victory did not belong to Earth Command. It didn't belong to Admiral Quint. It belonged to them. Rhea walked over to the comms panel and cut the channel without a word. She then opened a private, encrypted channel, keying in a code she had memorized years ago. She recorded a short message and sent it to a private contact, a shadowy figure deep within Earth's intelligence agency who owed her more than one favor. Mission accomplished. Fleet vanished. Send our full pardons to the usual dead drop, and a bonus for hazard pay. Or the next fleet that vanishes might be one of yours. She closed the channel and turned to her crew, her family of misfits and monsters. A feeling she had found deeply annoying, but couldn't deny, swelled in her chest. Responsibility. Affection. Set a course for the outer rim, she said, her voice steady and sure. Deep space. Somewhere the wine is cheap and the laws are negotiable. Tasha, now leaning heavily against the mainframe, tapped the side of her ruined optic. A grin, lopsided but genuine, spread across her face. It'll take a minute, she quipped, her voice scratchy. I'm flying with one eye now. The Vagrant, a broken, defiant, and suddenly very rich champion, turned its battered nose away from the sun of Earth and limped its way toward a new, lawless sunrise.